Welcome, everybody, to Out Comes the Sun podcast with my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi. And we have a really great show today. Oh, I'm very, very excited. We have, and I will say this correctly, we have Robert Fletcher. I'm going to throw it to you, Melissa, because you've actually had some communication with Robert. And I'm very excited about today's story conversation because it involves the fitness world, but the weightlifting, bodybuilding world, and what they're dealing with mental health. And I don't think people realize that it's a real issue in that world. So anyway, Melissa, please give a proper introduction to Robert Fletcher.
Absolutely. Well, I had the good fortune of being introduced to Robert by a mutual friend of ours by the name of Diana. And what I learned about Robert, besides the fact that he's a fitness personality, he's also a radio host of 93.5 FM out of New York.
Oh.
He is the president and founder of ANGT, which is America's Next Great Trainer. He has muscle&Fitness.com. He's the developer of The Gym. Is that right? TG?
Well, yeah,
Gym?
I work for TG, the gym, which has several gyms on the West Coast there. And I also, the Muscle and Fitness has just created a new platform, Muscle and Fitness Plus, under the global brands of Muscle and Fitness Hers, Flex Magazine, and of course the renowned Sports Bodybuilding and Fitness Weekend, which is held annually in Las Vegas.
I don't even have enough air in my lungs to have listed all that. So thank you for stepping in. So I one of the most important part of our conversation, and I immediately contacted Mariel as soon as you and I were off the phone, because she's my best girl, and secondly, because I knew the topic was something that we would want to expand on, is that you mentioned to me the high incidence of depression, anxiety, and suicide that's taking place in bodybuilding, muscle, and fitness world. And people aren't talking about it. I mean, I don't know a lot about it. I know that.
Yes, so I would say, well, it's actually, we all know it's an epidemic. It's not just unique to any demographic whatsoever. Right. It's not just bodybuilding. It's not just fitness. It's sports. It's across the whole spectrum. As I mentioned to you, several of my very close friends who you would never think would be in that position of taking their life, took their life. Include very young people too. My daughter, one of my daughter's best friends did. And so it hit home with me. So that's, I think, really connected us, because once we started speaking about that, so it's a topic that I know is very sincere to Muscle and Fitness, the brands, because it is an epidemic, and what you're doing is fantastic. And what our platform is basically what you're doing. We have this global platform, this great, tremendous outreach to reach so many people. And it comes down to two things, education and raising awareness, and bringing shows like yourself into we'll be sharing this, of course, with our platforms. But I think more people have to understand. I'm having a conversation with one of my very good friends one day. And then, as I said, on a holiday weekend, his family home, he took his life. So it's very difficult. It's very challenging. But I think life is a roller coaster. And I think the management, what can we do as within our platform to help better serve people, because you just don't know what people are going through. Whether it's a professional athlete, that happens. Well, how often does that happen? Right. Athletes have, they're making all this money. They have the whole world. They have everything. It's not limited to athletes. It's anyone.
No,
and those conversations, like I said, I'll have a great conversation with somebody one day, and the next thing you know, the world is collapsing, and the next thing you know, their life is over.
Well, yeah. So I mean, but what you're saying is absolutely correct. I want to draw it back into your kind of community a little bit, only because it is so broad, right? I mean, it's happening to your friends' kids. It's happening to your friend. It's my friends, people across the. But when it comes to bodybuilders, I kind of want to dig into that a little bit, because I think it's a surprise to people that look, quote unquote, so fit are having mental health problems. And my question to you is, do you think that the use of steroids is a problem there.
Well, that's another thing that we take very seriously at Muscle and Fitness, especially this new platform. Again, there's proper ways to do things, and through anti-aging, for example, there's many things that trainers need to know to identify what's happening on the inside of a person. And that begins with blood work, because that's going to be a great indication of what's happening inside. Then, of course, you have the mental component. So there has to be a better assessment. So we're trying to put proper protocols in place that better educate athletes and trainers.
Right.
Unfortunately, in sports, and, again, this is something that's broad, everyone tries to get to the next level, taking shortcuts and then doing things the wrong way.
Absolutely.
There's hormone optimization, for example. It can be a great benefit, but you can't abuse it, and you have to do it the right way with a physician. So the platform that we're having is pulling in these physicians. We're pulling in the mental health community, behavioral health, all these different things. And we're providing that platform to provide a voice to look out for the indicators of what might be happening, because someone looks happy, today, really trying to figure out what's happening on the inside of the person. So a better protocol.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the fitness world. Well, not even the anti-aging world, because the anti-aging world, and I put air quotes around it, because sometimes some of these protocols are actually going against anti-aging. They're actually accelerating the internal aging process by oxidating, your blood and all that kind of thing. But also those chemicals cause chemical imbalance to the brain, right? So all of a sudden, all of these things are in this place inside the body that you can't see. It's just like you're saying, and I'm agreeing with you 100%. I just want people to be very, very aware that hormone therapy is very delicate. And like you said, you've got to have trained professionals that really understand blood work and this, because it's so individual. I mean, as a woman, I do, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, right? Because I'm a woman and that seems to work for me. But even then, you have to be very careful.
More people need to know what you just said. That seems to work for me. The problem is that many don't look into it because they just don't think it will work. So my point is that for trainers, 12 years ago, when I was working with a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Fiorillo, we're here in Pearl River, very popular doctor, we set a protocol. Before we start training a client, we're going to see what's happening on the inside immediately. We're going to get the blood work done. We're going to see where their hormones are at, get everything checked out. And through him, he would give you the proper prescription, if need be, to optimize your life, your health, and your performance. In an athlete's case or a bodybuilder's case, yes, you can enhance performance, but you abuse anything, that's going to lead that's what also leads to, of course, to mental disorders. And when you're abusing.
And also, and you know this probably better than anyone, I live with somebody who's like an extreme athlete. He's been working out since he was a kid. He's from your part of the world. He's like, but he says, that proper training can raise your hormone levels. Like your T 100%. Can go,
and food.
Food and food. Proper, like heavy weightlifting, but done the proper way, can actually raise your hormone levels naturally.
Right.
And people need to know these things, because these shortcuts are causing people mental.
Medicine.
Exactly.
Functional medicine. And that's the difference. And that's what a point that most people have to understand. Everything today is take a pill. It's that whole conventional way of doing things. Yeah. Anti-aging is about functional medicine. It's about identifying what's the root of the problem. Yeah. And as you said, let's do this the right way. Foods can change the way you feel, the way you look, the way you think, your moods. Absolutely. We all know this. So now we have to find out and identify those things. Another big thing is inflammation. And I know you're very well aware, inflammation, that causes mood dysfunction, mental disorders, chronic disease, illness, aside from the physical components of arthritis and everything else, chronic disease, illness. Now, inflammation can be identified through food sensitivity testing. So you identify the foods that your body's inflamed to. And the interesting thing is, especially with many of our athletes that we give the food sensitivity test to, the foods that they most likely or hope they're not going to be sensitive
are the ones
to,
they are.
chicken and eggs.
Yeah. I know. I've done much of this work on myself. It's always the one thing that I really don't want to give up. It's like, sorry.
And it comes back.
Yeah. It's the one thing you're desiring. I don't know what it is, but it's true. It's absolutely the truth. I love this conversation because it's so important for a whole host of reasons, not just athletes, but people. When you talk about this, especially with your community, to have them realize that it is everything you do. It's not just about enhancing performance. If you don't properly balance the brain, your performance is going to lack eventually, right? Because eventually you're going to come off that high, right? Or that whatever that is. And to me, it seems like, because I've always thought that my grandfather probably had a mental illness. It probably was bipolar, but I think it was triggered by the amount of alcohol he did. Now, that's a totally different conversation, but what's similar to it is that chemical thing, because people talk about chemical imbalance. It really isn't that. It's an addiction to something that you know what I mean? And it causes that imbalance, and then, and then it triggers a whole host of things.
A whole host of other things.
And people have to realize it's body, it's mind, it's spirit, but it's also food, exercise, movement, grounding. I mean, how important is grounding? I mean, I don't know if you know anything about earthing, but how great is that at getting rid of inflammation?
Yes,
or helping
100%, and that's. Yeah, so Jake Wood he's the owner of this whole platform, Muscle Fitness and the Olympia, and Dan Solomon, he's the chief officer. Because of all these things, what's very important to them is getting the word out through what we can do. We'll provide the information, we'll provide the resources, but now the person reading, they have to be accountable. We're telling them what to do, and you have to watch those. As you said, there's certain triggers. If you're drinking too much, and that does tie into what everyone was saying, you're identifying the problem. That's going to affect the way you think. Right. It's going to affect the way you feel. And then all of a sudden, what's going to happen? Low self-esteem, depression, anxiety. What's next? That's just, as you said, a whole host of things, which ultimately, unfortunately, is sadly going to be a very bad outcome in many cases.
Right.
So
I want to bring up something, if I could. There's a group called the National Center of Biotechnology Information, and they put together a whole host of reports from, whether it's from the medical world or not so much the pharmaceutical world. A lot of it's the holistic world. So they put together these reports, and I dove into, when I knew we were going to talk to you, what were the top flags in looking for when people, not just in bodybuilding, but in any muscle and fitness. I used to have a gal that worked for us in our company that when she started working for us, I think she was probably about 50 to 60 pounds overweight, and moved out to California from the South and began working out and hanging out on the beach. And just turned into a hottie toddy, just got this cute little body, working out really hard. But she began working out an hour before work. Then she would work. She'd do a little 30-minute workout on her lunch break. Then she would do an hour. And it became so much that it became her world. And she began to not look as healthy. So her focus became different, right? So one of the things that this group talked about that I want to bring up, and you guys have already touched on the points, but I think it's worth us pushing into a little bit more. And before I share them, I want to say, people like me who are not workout fanatics, I work out every day to stay alive and to stay happy, but I'm not trying to push myself into a certain look. I'm just staying healthy and happy. So people like me look at people who are more focused on fitness, and we think, well, we know that it increases working out, and the exercise for the brain increases the plasticity, the neuroplasticity. So it makes the brain able to grow, right? And it creates new neurons. So you're thinking it's all good. But what the center said was that it's the restrictive dieting that a lot of people put on. So then it's disordered eating. It's not healthy eating, even if it's the right foods, right? And it's this excessive overtraining, which is what one of my team members did.
It's extreme behavior. It's extreme.
It's the extreme behavior. And so the triggers are the flags that were identified was the behavior that gets somebody into it in the first place. Like the gal that worked for me, she got into it and became very extreme. So in your opinion, what are triggers that parents need to be looking out for their kids, wives and husbands, and partners need to look out for their loved ones?
Well, 100%. You said it yourself. It's really habits and behaviors of the individual. Identify, if they're starting to go to an extreme level, especially if they're younger, which many people do. Mm-hmm. And if they go to that level, now bodybuilders more so, but they go into this extreme phase of dieting. Yeah. And it takes tremendous amount of discipline. That's something I have a lot of discipline, but I couldn't go to that level because I love food. So I'm just gonna eat what
and a smoothie steak ain't cutting it.
But I think back to what you said, to stick to the point of triggers. So, first, what's their dietary needs, and are they taking that in? That's why a part of this platform, the first thing, especially a bodybuilder, say, mm-hmm. their blood work should be done more frequently, especially as they get closer to a competition and stage ready, because their body fat is so low. They're going, dehydrated. So think of all that's going on with inside. Now that completely is going to affect the way you think, obviously. Mm-hmm. But that's what's very important to Jake and to Dan. But we want to monitor that. So an example is one of the things we talk about. Are you familiar with IV infusion? I'm sure.
Yeah,
IV
absolutely.
Infusion and the injectables. So you take an athlete, for example, that's going to stage ready. So these IVs are amazing, especially for recovery. Glutathione, for example, glutathione, B12, vitamin C, they're awesome. Maximum absorption right away. So what would bring greater value to these athletes? Because once they get to that stage, when it's done, they have to get right back and get back into recovery mode because their body is so depleted. But the triggers are, you have to be accountable, and then the surrounding peers looking out. That's why we're really focused on emphasizing the role of dialing into your physician, especially bodybuilders, athletes that are going to the extreme levels. Like I said, bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts, they go to the, it's not even necessarily competitive bodybuilders. Some people, as you said, Melissa, that go to the extreme level, people seek happiness. Yeah. That's and they want happy. So they think the happy is going to come from, I'm just going to keep pushing myself. But now it's reversing because you're depleting your body of what truly needs.
And then you don't start thinking. I know this firsthand. I was an obsessive exerciser early on, and I did all kinds of diet. It was the 80s. So I did no fat. I was vegan. I did no fat. I did I did all kinds of diets. And what that does is it messes with how you think. But the more you do it, the more obsessed you become with doing it, because everything's out of balance. So it is a mental game. And I was thinking, as you were talking about the bodybuilders, but even the athletes that are getting ready for performance, it seems like it goes from, especially with bodybuilders, because it's all about being shredded, right? You're dehydrating so that you can see all that muscle, and the everything is cut, right? But that extreme behavior going, then when you come out of it, it's like, oh, now I'll eat whatever, instead of having the education about, it's like breaking a fast. You got to do it properly. Otherwise, you're really going to mess with the brain. I think that's what's scary.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, again, I think just reinforcing, we want to watch the athletes, and that's what's very important to Dan and Jake, because they recognize, what they put their bodies through. So how can we make sure they get the proper care and provide them the right information, the right resources, on site where they have access to these
Absolutely.
things.
Well, I love that you're doing this. It's amazing. It's so important to just highlight that for people that, I mean, the rest of the world thinks they're healthy, right? And they're role models. They're role models for young people. So those role models have to, I mean, you even think about celebrities that take steroids or something for a role and they look like superheroes,
Mm-hmm.
but then, these,
This is not
right, but
restricted.
then these kids
Yeah.
are looking and think, oh my God, I'm going to do that because these are my heroes, right? So I think it's a responsibility that we all have who have any kind of following or anything, is to get information, correct information, just because that will help people with their brains. Listen, we're going to take just a tiny break. We'll come back to you.
Great.
I want to thank one of our incredible sponsors, BrainTap. You may have listened to our podcast with the founder of BrainTap, Patrick Porter. And if you did, you'll definitely want to get involved in BrainTap. And if you didn't, please, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen. It's so incredibly informative. Here's what BrainTap can do. You can literally build your brain fitness with BrainTap's mobile app and wearable headset. Everyone here at Outcomes the Sun podcast has had and continues to have positive results with BrainTap. Your brain is guided from awake and reactionary patterns to intuitive and creative responses. BrainTap is backed by neuroscience and research and was developed by Patrick Porter himself. BrainTap creates a symphony of brainwave activity to optimize your brain's potential, restore your ability, balance your energy, and calm your brain. And listen, it is a game changer when it comes to sleep. This technology is truly a gift, and I am so incredibly grateful to be able to share it with you.
Hi, everyone. If you're joining us now, we are having an amazing conversation with Robert Fletcher, and you can reach him on his Instagram, ANGTTV, on Instagram. You're head of Muscle and Fitness magazine? No,
They have the new platform they created, which ties in these
okay.
physicians. So that's known as Muscle and Fitness
Muscle and
Plus.
Fitness Plus. Which is so cool, by the way. Like, such great information and very well done. Like, it's beautifully put together. I mean, very impressive. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was like I said, these resources that they have, back Dr. Robert Goldman, he's the founder of the largest anti-aging conference in the world. So the annual event's held in Las Vegas. So I have a great relationship with him. That's how this whole thing began, because I felt that we have to bring more of the functional medicine component and the education with the physicians into not just the bodybuilding world, but the sports world. And as I said, Jake and Dan take this to heart about really doing whatever they can to provide this information to the athletes and making sure that they do everything they can to protect their athletes, as we all know, they go to extreme levels. It's an extreme sport. It's a professional sport. And but they want them to keep them safe,
and functional medicine, I've been doing functional holistic kind of medicine, for 40 years. I raised my kids that way. And it is, when you start really looking into it, it is so logical and practical, right? When you look at it, it's like, oh, well, this makes sense. Oh, it makes sense to eat proper food. It makes sense to, like, when things are happening, it's finding root causes of things instead of dealing with symptoms. So I'm a big believer. So, and I do believe that movement, functional medicine, grounding, meditation, like all of these different things are the fountain of youth, but they're a combination. Like, you can't leave one out, right? So Melissa and I talk a lot about this because my partner and I talk about the 7 doctors. We talk about Dr. Sun, Dr. Air, Dr. Water, Dr. Exercise, Dr. Nutrition, Dr. Earth, and Dr. Rest. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're free, right? But people don't understand the simplicity of living a balanced life, getting sunlight, right? Getting light in your eyes, getting enough sleep. People don't realize the importance of sleep. And especially when you're talking about athletes, Bobby was telling me about an athlete the other day, and her, it's kind of her her magic trick or whatever it is. Her, I'm saying it wrong, but her thing that she relies on is sleep. And she sleeps like 12 hours at night, and she takes a nap during the day.
Good Lord.
But her performance is so great because I mean, she obviously has turned it into the art of recovery, right? So she knows how to recover. So I don't know. I just find this fascinating and really important. I consider myself an athlete. I know only because I played one in a movie once, but also I grew up and I was a ski racer, so I can actually say I was an athlete. But I've been athletic since I was a little kid. And I just think it's so important to understand all that surrounds, athleticism or fitness.
Yeah. So back to the key things that you're talking about there and dialing in on. I think it's people have to pay more attention to consistent daily actions and behaviors to all the different things: the physical, the mental, the emotional, the social, the spiritual, the family life. And then at the end of the day, if you journal, if you gauge yourself 1 to 10 on each one of those categories, sort of get an idea of where you're at. Are you paying attention to your physical? You're working out, you're taking care of yourself. The healthy eating aspects, which includes the food. You gauge yourself and monitor and make those deposits daily. That's how your life begins to change. And that's what functional medicine is all about, right? Doing things more the natural way. Let's identify the problem. Let's try to fix the problem naturally. Proper food, vitamin supplementation through a doctor with a trainer who work together, who provide the best possible program for you. And then, of course, those things are going to change dependent upon, a professional athlete's going to have obviously a much different day than a person who's just, they're extreme. And Mariel, what you said, sleep is huge recovery. You have to be able to get that rest in. Recovery is just as important, if not more important than the actual training. If you're not giving your body time to rest and recover, it's not going to grow. And then it's going to affect brain function, all behavior, and everything else. So it's all dialed in.
Yeah, so that's cool. Let me ask you a question. What is your background? Were you a bodybuilder at one point?
No, I was actually mostly martial. I was a kickboxer. I was on the U.S. kickboxing team, but I did back in the day. It was called cross training. So I would cross training. I would lift weights and then I would kickbox. That my day, and I was obsessed. I was I was completely different lifestyle then. It was 7 days a week. It was back in the day of no pain, no gain. Never constrained enough. So a lot of the things now probably I contradicted back then. But you have to have the rest. You can't do it 7 days. You got to give your body time to recover. So I did the martial arts for a very long time. Had my own gym and martial arts school, self-defense, and
that's a wonderful discipline though, because that's kind of wonderful because it brings that kind of Easter mentality to it. I like that. That's great.
Well, 100%. Yeah, and that was real important to me because I know that through what I did with my school and my gym, the lives that I've impacted, and that was, gave me the most satisfaction. So as a trainer,
I bet.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, you're so fascinating. I that's fascinating to me. Yeah, it's so funny when you talk about being obsessed. I just think that we grew up in the 80s, man. I mean, not grew up, but we were like
back in the day.
That was the thing. Everything was extreme.
It was great.
I mean, it was like. That was the days of Wall Street. Like everybody was crazy. We were crazy. We're all kind of coming back.
And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, I know. Trade
it for the world.
It was great memories, but I'm glad they're in the past.
I'm with you.
Exactly.
I'm with you. Yeah. Same book.
So good. Yeah. Melissa, do you have anything else that you'd like to ask Robert?
No, I do have one thing I'm asking, and I think you alluded to it in the beginning, Robert, when we the biggest concern I have for our audience is if people in the muscle and fitness world, in the bodybuilding world, in any discipline form of workout, whether it's the kickboxing or whatever it is, is there a place that's known in this world? I know that's a broad stroke here, but is there a place that you're aware that's known of where people are kind of directed if they're suffering from any kind of anxiety or fear-based anxieties or depression or suicide ideation?
Right.
Well, it's interesting you say that. That's we spoke about this when we originally spoke. Is our platform is going to include those resources. So
Fantastic.
that's what we want to be able to provide those people, especially the younger people, as you said earlier. Those younger people are looking up to whether you're a pro bodybuilder, a pro athlete, a celebrity. Mm-hmm. I want to do what they're doing. So we want them to understand, where can we direct them? So because Muscle and Fitness has a large outreach, we're going to continue to grow this platform, and mental health is definitely going to be a big part of resource information. Having experts on there talking about it, triggers to look for in younger people, all sorts of topics, and then providing other resources where they can reach out.
Absolutely.
To, where they can go.
Well, we want to
well,
work with you on that because, sorry, Melissa, because we want Mariel Hemingway Foundation to be a resource navigator. So maybe we can come together and help you to we
Not
will.
Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're doing it.
It's so important. And you do have such a large reach, and that's so incredibly beneficial. I mean, all we want to do is be able to say, look, Muscle and Fitness is doing this, and look where they're reaching all these people. Go there, go there for that. Right.
Millions and millions of people. So, back to what I was saying earlier, also at our live events, what are we going to do at our live events? Wouldn't it be great to have someone, we have the physician there with the trainer, with the athlete, with the mental health coach.
Perfect.
Because we know all these things that happen out there. No one's going to come up front and say, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling depressed. I want to go jump off a bridge tomorrow."
That's right.
They're just not gonna,
there's still so much embarrassment and shame, and you think that you're and you're worried. Oh, I'm crazy. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. Right? And it's very challenging, but it's so good what you're doing because you're providing them a place to talk. Sorry, Melissa.
In the world of working out, when your goal is to be more than, to admit that you are somehow less than, it's impossible. So that's why I love that you're going to be offering this panel of experts, because listen, even if they're sitting in this from owning a gym, even if someone is only gaining 1% of what you just taught them, and it helps them just 1% more than where they were yesterday, you've already won. So anybody in the audience getting exposure to this, and I know at Mariel Hemingway Foundation, we want to be able to direct people to you. And because people come to MHF for looking for, where do I go for this? Where do I go? And we've spoken to a lot of different industries. You're the first in this industry, and what a great representative you've been. I know there was a little bit of trepidation. What's he going to say? What's he going to agree to? But you've been right on key with everything I know that Mariel and her life partner really believe when it comes to workout and fitness. And everything that you've said, it lines up beautifully with what we say on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Robert. You've been great.
Oh, thank you. And don't forget, you have that open platform. So, it's a great source of outreach. So whether you want to provide an article that we can get up there, direct people to you, you want to help people go to you as well.
Thank you so much, Robert. This was just enlightening. I'm just so thrilled. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Outcomes the Sun podcast. But again, tell me again where we can reach you on Instagram.
Sure. ANGT TV.
On Instagram. And that's the Muscle and Fitness Plus, correct?
Yeah. Yep. That's the platform that I'm running. Yeah. And then, of course, follow Muscle and Fitness at Muscle and Fitness.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on Outcomes the Sun podcast. We'll see you next week for another amazing episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Outcomes the Sun. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube. And you can donate to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation at the marielhemingwayfoundation.org. And I want to spell Hemingway for you, HEMINGWAY.org. I only say that because a lot of people put 2 M's, and that just won't work. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the donate button at the bottom, and it will take you right to a link with a QR code. And if you go to marielhemingway.org, you can also press the donate button and be able to donate to the foundation, which is designed to help guide people towards finding the right solutions for their mental health issues. That is my goal. I'm just trying to raise money so I can come up with an app and a website that has all the information you could possibly want to know about mental health and where to go. But we are in the process of making that happen, and your donation means so much to us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.